Welcome back to the deep dive on Reformed thinking. I have to be honest, the stack of research you sent over for this one was pretty intense. I usually like to ease into things, maybe crack a joke, but the imagery right at the start of these articles, it literally made my palms sweat.
It is intense.
Hmm,
We're definitely not starting with a warm, fuzzy story today. We are starting with, well, a life or death scenario.
yeah, let's just get right into it then. The source material opens with this aviation concept called the graveyard spiral. Now, I'm not a pilot. I get nervous just hitting turbulence in a commercial jet. So, walking through the mechanics of this was genuinely terrifying.
It's the pilot's worst nightmare. And it happens because of something called spatial disorientation.
Right. So, paint the picture for us. You're in a small plane. Maybe it's night, or you're stuck in this thick, soupy cloud cover. You can't see the ground.
Can't see the stars.
Nothing. There's absolutely no horizon line. You are, for all intents and purposes, flying blind.
And this is where your own biology betrays you. See, on the ground, your inner ear, that's the vestibular system, it's great at telling you which way is up.
Okay.
It relies on fluid moving around in these little canals. But in the air, without any visual reference, that whole system can be hacked.
That's the crazy part. The articles explain that if you enter a gradual turn, a really, really smooth bank, the fluid in your ear just stabilizes. It stops moving.
Yep.
So your brain stops getting the signal that you're even turning.
Exactly. You are banking, the plane is spiraling downwards, but you physically feel like you're flying perfectly straight and level.
And as the spiral gets tighter and tighter, the G-force starts to push you down into the seat. Your brain, it just interprets that pressure as normal gravity.
So in your head, you're sitting there, wings level, just cruising along. But in reality,
Right.
you're dropping like a stone, spinning right toward the ground.
And here's the moment of truth. The pilot looks down at his instrument panel. He sees the artificial horizon.
And it's tilted. It shows a steep bank.
The altimeter is just unwinding, spinning down, showing a huge loss of altitude.
But, and this is the key part, his body, every sense he has, is screaming that the instruments are wrong.
He feels level. He feels safe. So he has this split-second choice. Does he trust the gadget on the dashboard? Or does he trust his own gut, his own senses?
If he trusts his senses, he pulls back on the stick to try and climb, which actually just tightens the spiral. It drives him into the ground even faster.
That's the graveyard spiral.
That's it. If he trusts his feelings, he dies. If he trusts the instruments,
Yeah.
even though they feel completely wrong, he lives.
Man, that is a heavy, heavy way to start a show. But the reason we're talking about plane crashes is because we're doing a deep dive into a single sentence from the Bible that claims we are all stuck in that very cockpit.
That's right. We're looking at Proverbs 21.2, and I would argue this verse is basically the spiritual diagnosis of that exact condition.
Let me read it out so we have it in our heads. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart.
It's short, but it is devastating. Solomon is telling us that human beings are born with a broken internal gyroscope. We're all flying in the clouds, totally convinced we're level, while we are, in fact, spiraling.
Which brings up a term I see in the notes here, total depravity. Now, in our circles, we hear that term a lot, but reading this description of the pilot, it kind of hits different. It's not just that we're bad people, is it? It's that our actual equipment is faulty.
That's a really helpful way to think about it. Total depravity doesn't mean you're as evil as you could possibly be. It doesn't mean everyone is a serial killer.
Right.
It means the corruption of sin has affected every single part of us, including our ability to judge ourselves correctly, our reason, our conscience, our spiritual inner ear. It's all giving us false data.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to figure out why we can't trust our own sense of rightness. Because if this text is true, my feeling that I'm a good person might be just as deadly as that pilot's feeling that his wings are level.
It is a rescue mission. We have to learn to ignore the inner ear and instead learn to read the instrument panel of God's Word.
Okay, so let's break down the verse itself. The research you sent points out that this is structured like a courtroom drama.
It is. Hebrew poetry often uses this device called antithetic parallelism. It sounds like a fancy term, but it just means you have two lines that are opposites and they clash against each other.
Like two different attorneys arguing a case.
Precisely. In the first half of the verse, you get the first court. That is the court of self-opinion. The defendant is you, the judge, also you. And the defense attorney is, you guessed it, also you.
Convenient.
Very. Then you have this pivot point, and you enter the second court, the Supreme Court of Reality, where God is the sole judge.
Okay, let's stick in that first court for a minute. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes. There's a Hebrew word there for way, Derek. Is that talking about a specific choice? Like, I chose to buy this car.
It includes that, but Derek is much bigger. It means a road, a journey, a manner of life, your whole trajectory.
So the pattern of your habits.
Yes, it's the pattern. So Solomon isn't just saying we rationalize one little lie. He's saying when we look at the whole movie of our lives, the general direction we're headed, we give it a big thumbs up.
And the text says, every way. That feels pretty aggressive. I mean, surely there are people out there who know they're on the wrong path. What about, I don't know, a cartel boss? Or someone who's visibly destroying their own life?
Well, even there, the psychology is fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
very few people wake up, look in the mirror, and say, I am a villain. I am the bad guy. The cartel boss tells himself he's a provider, he's loyal to his family, he's a man of respect in a world that disrespects him.
He frames it as a virtue.
Always. And that is what the Hebrew word for right implies here. The word is yashar.
Yeah, sure. Okay, unpack that for us.
It literally means straight, level, smooth. You have to picture the ancient world. Roads were terrible, rocks and potholes everywhere. A yashar road was a dream. It was flat and easy to travel on.
So when the proverb says a man's way is right in his own eyes, it means when he looks at his life, he sees a smooth highway.
Exactly. He doesn't see the stumbling blocks. He doesn't see the crooked turns.
That is so true. I catch myself doing this with that internal defense attorney you mentioned. If someone cuts me off in traffic and I just lay on the horn, I don't think I have an anger problem. I think I'm teaching them a lesson for public safety.
Right. Or think about gossip. We never say, I'm destroying this person's reputation because I'm bored and malicious.
No, of course not.
We say, I'm just venting, or the classic, I'm sharing a prayer request.
Prayer request, that is the all-time church move.
It is the ultimate spin. We take our sin and we dress it up in a tuxedo so it looks respectable. We are absolute experts at securing a not guilty verdict in the court of our own minds.
But the text pinpoints the problem with that little phrase, in his own eyes.
That is the fatal flaw. It's solipsism. The standard of measurement is curved inward on itself. I'm measuring my behavior by me, or maybe by my intentions. I didn't mean to hurt them, so I'm innocent.
Or we measure ourselves against other people who we think are worse. I might be grumpy, but at least I'm not like that guy.
Exactly. But the text just cuts right through all of that. It reminds us of Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things. It's not just that we make mistakes. It's that the very organ we use to evaluate the mistakes, our heart, our mind, is actively trying to trick us.
It goes right back to the pilot. The instrument he is relying on, his inner ear, is feeding him a convincing lie. So the court of self says, I'm good, I'm yashar, I'm straight.
Case closed. Verdict, not guilty.
But then we hit the pivot.
The adversative wa.
Bless you.
It's just the Hebrew letter wa that functions as but and is the hinge of the whole door. We step out of the hallucination and into reality. But the Lord weighs the heart.
This is where the source material completely blew my mind. I need you to walk us through this Egyptian connection. The note said this was a massive cultural aha moment for the original readers, but I want to understand why.
It really is incredible.
Yeah.
So to appreciate this, you have to put yourself in Solomon's world. Egypt was the superpower to the south. Their culture, their art, their theology, it was everywhere. And the central image of Egyptian religion was the Book of the Dead.
I've seen pictures of this. It's the judgment scene, right, with the scales.
Yes, the Hall of Judgment. The Egyptians believed that when you died, you were led into this hall by Anubis, the jackal-headed god. And right in the center of the room, there was a giant set of scales.
A literal balance scale.
Right. And on one side of the scale, they would place your heart. They believed the heart contained all your deeds, your memories, your entire moral character.
Okay, so your heart's on one side. What was on the other?
The feather of Ma'at. Ma'at was the goddess of truce, order, cosmic balance. That single feather represented the perfect standard.
So your heart had to balance against a feather. That seems, well, impossible.
It was terrifying. If your heart was heavy with sin or guilt or just chaos, it would tip the scale down, and standing right there, waiting, was this monster called Ammit, part lion, part hippo, part crocodile.
Oh, wow.
If you failed the weigh-in, Ammit ate your heart. You ceased to exist. Total annihilation.
So that is the cultural backdrop. Solomon's original readers would have immediately visualized that whole scene when they heard, weighs the heart.
Immediately. But Solomon does something completely radical here. He co-opts the imagery, but he strips out all the pagan gods. In Proverbs 21:2, there's no Anubis. There is no feather of Ma'at who is doing the weighing.
Yahweh, the Lord.
Yahweh himself. He is the scale. He is the standard. He isn't just watching the process. He's the auditor. The Hebrew word is takan, which means to measure, to regulate. It's a jeweler's term, like for weighing gold.
So God is taking our lives and putting them on these precision scales. And notice the shift. We judge our ways, our external path, but God weighs the heart.
That is the really scary part. The way is what people see. Is your church attendance, your charitable giving, your polite language.
The outside.
The outside. But the heart, the Hebrew libet, that's the engine room. It's your motives,
Yeah.
your secret affections, what you actually love, and what you actually hate when nobody's looking.
So theoretically, you could have a perfectly straight way and a completely heavy, crooked heart.
Oh, absolutely. This is the Pharisee problem in a nutshell. You can do the right thing for the absolute wrong reason.
Give me an example of that. What does that look like today in 2024?
Okay, well, imagine a guy who is a model employee. He works late, he helps his colleagues, he hits every deadline. His way is yashar. It's straight.
Looks great on his performance review.
Totally. But why is he doing it?
Yeah.
Maybe he's doing it because he's consumed by ambition and he wants to crush his rival for a promotion. Or maybe he's doing it because his whole identity is wrapped up in people telling him he's smart and capable.
So on the outside, it looks like diligence. But on the scale of God, it weighs his pride.
Or take a more religious example. You can preach a sermon that is biblically accurate, pure truth, word for word. But if you're preaching it because you love the sound of your own voice, or because you want power over the congregation, the sermon is right in your own eyes, but the heart behind it is rejected by God.
Man, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because I can fool my boss. I can probably fool my spouse sometimes. I can definitely fool my pastor. And I can even fool myself. That's the whole point of the first half of the verse.
Right.
But I can't fool the scale.
You cannot fool the auditor. He doesn't look at the packaging. He opens the box and inspects the contents.
So we have the two courts. Court 1 says innocent. Court 2 says, let's check the scales. What happens when the verdict actually comes in? Because the Bible has some pretty rough examples of this weigh-in.
It does. It gives us case studies. The classic one is King David. Remember when Samuel the prophet went to anoint the new king of Israel?
Yeah, he goes to Jesse's house, and he sees the oldest brother, Eliab.
Right. And Samuel totally falls for the way. He looks at Eliab and thinks, this guy is tall, he's strong, he looks like a leader. Surely this is the guy. Samuel is judging by his eyes.
And God shuts that down fast.
It's one of the most famous lines in Scripture. Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, for the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart.
That's comforting in one sense that God chose the scrawny shepherd kid David. But it's also pretty disturbing that even a prophet like Samuel could be totally tricked by optics.
True. But there's a much darker example. The story of Belshazzar in the book of Daniel.
A handwriting on the wall.
This is the ultimate the Lord weighs the heart moment. Belshazzar is having this huge, arrogant party. He thinks he's on top of the world. He's drinking wine out of the stolen temple vessels. He feels right.
He's flying level in his own mind.
Totally. And then a disembodied hand appears and writes 4 words on the plaster. Mene. Mene, tekel, upharsin.
And Daniel comes in to interpret it. What does tekel mean?
It comes from the very same root word as in our proverb takan. It means you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting.
Found wanting. That's such a polite translation for a devastating reality.
It basically means lightweight. You're hollow. You don't have enough moral mass to tip the scale.
And if we're honest, if we're applying reform theology here, Belshazzar isn't just some historical bad guy. He is. Well, he's us.
That's the crisis.
Yeah.
This is where the deep dive gets really uncomfortable. If God is using a perfect scale, if the standard is absolute holiness, and we are born with broken internal scales and hearts that are deceitful above all things, then we're all Belshazzar.
Yeah.
Every single one of us is found wanting.
This is the second use of the law, right? The idea that the law functions as a mirror.
Yes. The law exists to show us our dirt. We try to pile our good works on the scale to balance it out. Look, God, I volunteered at the soup kitchen. I didn't cheat on my taxes this year.
We try to add weight.
We try. But Isaiah 64 says that even our most righteous deeds are like filthy rags.
Because they're stained with all those mixed motives we were just talking about.
Exactly. So you're throwing dirty laundry on the scale, hoping it will weigh as gold. It doesn't work. If the proverb just ended here, we would be the pilot spiraling into the ground. It would be a death sentence.
Weighed and found
That's
wanting. End of episode. Thanks for listening.
A pretty grim sign-off.
Why we're reformed thinking. We don't stop at the diagnosis. We have to talk about the cure. And the outline calls this the Great Exchange.
This is where everything changes. We've established that no human being can pass the weigh-in. We're all too light. But the gospel introduces a new character into the courtroom, the upright man,
Jesus.
the only man who was truly Yashar. His way was actually objectively straight. But more than that, God weighed his heart. Think about it. God weighed Jesus in the wilderness temptation. He weighed him in the Garden of Gethsemane. He weighed him while he was being tortured on the cross.
And the verdict was different than Belshazzar's.
The verdict was always, "This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased." Every time the scale tipped, it hit the bottom with a thud, infinite moral weight. Pure gold, no mixed motives, no pride, just perfect love and obedience.
Okay, so Jesus is heavy on the scale, I get that. But I'm still light. How does his heaviness help my lightness?
This is the doctrine of imputation. It is the absolute heart of the gospel. Think of the scale again. On one side, you have the standard of God's perfect holiness. On the other side, you have you, and you're floating up in the air because you have no weight.
Right, found wanting.
So in the great exchange, Jesus steps onto the scale. But he doesn't just stand next to you. He takes your place. He takes your wanting status. He takes your sin, your lightness, your filthy rags. He takes all of that upon himself on the cross.
He becomes the lightweight so that we don't have to be.
Exactly. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin. He takes the verdict of Belshazzar. He is rejected so he can be accepted. And in return, we get his weight. We get his righteousness.
So now when God looks at the scale with me on it,
He doesn't see your mixed motives or your self-deception. He sees the infinite merit of Christ. The scale slams down on the side of righteousness, not because you fixed your internal gyroscope, but because you have been credited with the perfect record of the one pilot who knows how to fly.
that is justification.
That is justification. It's being declared right in the Supreme Court, even though you know, and God knows, that in yourself, you were completely wrong.
That breathes a lot of air back into the room. I was holding my breath there for a minute.
It's the only way to breathe. Otherwise, you're just suffocating under the pressure to try and be perfect.
So, okay, we're justified. The verdict is secured. But we still have to wake up tomorrow and go to work. We still have to raise our kids. We still have to make decisions. This proverb is still in the Bible for a reason. How do we live under these scales, practically?
Well, we have to recalibrate our instruments. If we know for a fact that our inner ear is broken, we have to stop flying by feel.
Which means we have to stop listening to the culture's favorite commandment.
Yeah.
Follow your heart.
Oh, that is the worst advice in the history of the world. It sounds like a Disney movie, but if Jeremiah 17 is true, follow your heart, is literally a suicide mission. It's saying, trust the broken compass.
So if my heart says, I really, really want to do this, but the Bible, the external instrument panel says, do not do this, I have a conflict.
And
Yeah.
you have to assume the instrument is right and your feelings are a hallucination. That's what faith looks like in the cockpit. It's saying, I feel like I'm flying level, but the Bible says I'm banking hard to the left, so I'm going to correct my course based on the Bible.
That is so hard to do in the moment, especially when the emotion is strong. The outline mentions something called hot certainty. I love that phrase.
It's a great diagnostic tool. You know that feeling when you're in an argument, maybe with your spouse or a coworker, and you feel this rush of heat, this indignation. You're thinking, I cannot believe they did that. I'm so right about this.
Oh, yeah. The righteous anger.
Beware of hot certainty. Anger is very often the bodyguard of a delusion. When you feel that heat, that is the red light flashing on the dashboard. That is usually the moment your internal defense attorney is working overtime to suppress the truth.
So when I feel super angry and super right, that is exactly when I should stop and check the instruments.
Exactly. Ask yourself the hard questions. What do I really want right now? Am I defending God's truth? Or am I just defending my bruised ego?
Would I do this if no one was watching? That's another one the notes suggest.
That's the auditor's question. It strips away the performance, the posturing.
Let's bring this into the church for a second. You mentioned earlier that we need to recalibrate weekly. Is this why Reformed liturgy is often structured the way it is?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to a solid Reformed church, you'll notice we usually do a confession of sin right near the beginning of the service.
Which, to an outsider, can seem kind of clear the room depressing. Hi, welcome to church. Let's start by talking about how bad we all are.
I get that. I do. But think about the pilot again. If your gyroscope is drifting, you need to reset it. The confession of sin is us as a community saying, God, we drifted this week. We trusted our own eyes. We thought we were right, but we were wrong. Recalibrate us.
And then immediately following that is the assurance of pardon.
Right. We don't leave you in the guilt. We point you back to the scale. We say, but Christ has died. Christ is risen. Christ will come again. We remind you that despite your drift, the verdict is still righteous because of Jesus. It's a weekly reality check that keeps us from spiraling out of control.
It also has to change how we deal with people. I mean, if I really believe Proverbs 21.2 that I am capable of being totally convinced I'm right while being totally wrong, that has to kill arrogance.
Kills it dead. It makes you humble. In a conflict, you can actually say, look, I think I'm right here. I really do. But I know my heart is tricky. I could be missing something. Help me see what I'm missing.
Imagine if we actually talked like that on social media.
It would be a different world. But it also makes apologies possible. If my identity is built on me being right, then admitting I'm wrong feels like it destroys me.
It's a death blow.
It is.
Right.
But if my identity is built on Christ being right for me, then I can afford to be wrong. I can say, I'm sorry, I was flying by my feelings. I crashed into you. Please forgive me.
That's true freedom. You don't have to be the defense attorney anymore. You can fire him.
You can fire him. The case has already been settled in the Supreme Court.
I want to circle back just for a moment to the image we started with, the pilot in the clouds.
It's a haunting image, but it's also a hopeful one if you know how to fly.
The warning is crystal clear. Don't be the guy who smiles at the fluffy clouds and ignores the blaring alarms. A way that seems right ends in death.
But the hope is that we are not flying alone, and we are not flying without instruments.
I was thinking about this during my prep, and I wanted to run this by you. We often think the goal of the Christian life, sanctification, is to finally get our own scales to balance, to finally become people who are heavy enough on our own.
And that is a huge trap.
It is, isn't it? Because the goal isn't to fix our side of the scale. The goal is to realize the scale is broken, or rather that we are broken on the scale. The goal is to stop trying to manipulate the weights and measures.
The goal is to throw your entire weight, your whole life, your failures, your straight ways, and your crooked heart onto the side of the scale that's already occupied by Jesus.
Because he is the only counterweight that matters.
Amen. He's the anchor. He's the ballast. If you are in him, you will never, ever be found wanting.
That is a great place to land the plane. Thank you for walking us through this. It was a lot to take in, but good.
My privilege.
And to you listening, check your instruments. Open the Word, don't trust the inner ear, and we will see you next time on Reformed Thinking.